The room was so quiet you could hear the clock. A man in a tan prison uniform lay very still, his eyes open, his hands strapped so he wouldn't move. The warden asked if he had any last words. He spoke softly, then closed his eyes. The drugs began to flow. A red digital clock on the wall showed the time as the doctor stepped forward. Time of death, 6:16 p.m. The man was Glen Edward Rogers, called the cross-country killer and the Casanova Killer. It happened at Florida State Prison on May 15, 2025. Outside the prison, camera lights blinked in the dark, and families held each other tight. Inside, the witnesses watched in heavy silence, knowing this long story had reached its sharpest point. But one question hung in the air like cold fog. How did a smooth-talking drifter end up here, in this last, still moment? Years earlier, Glen didn't look scary. He smiled easily, told jokes, and made friends fast. He worked odd jobs and drove across states, always moving, always looking for the next place to stay. People said he could make you feel like you'd known him forever. He was tall, with bright eyes, and a voice that sounded kind. But under that friendly face, there was trouble. Deep trouble. He told big stories about himself. Some were half true, many were not. He liked the attention those stories brought. He drifted from city to city, Florida, California, Mississippi, Ohio, and more, never staying long. He was like a leaf in a fast river, moving wherever the water pulled him. He picked up work in bars, at fairs, and on crews that didn't ask many questions. He learned that if you smile, people relax. If you listen, people trust you. If you talk sweet, doors open. That was his talent, to be the person someone wanted to meet. It made him hard to spot and even harder to catch. But behind the charm, people noticed little storms. He lost his temper. He drank too much. He lied when the truth would have been easier. He made promises he never kept. He spent money he didn't have and borrowed what he couldn't repay. Sometimes he disappeared in the middle of the night. And when bad things happened in towns he passed through, police would soon start asking about a tall drifter with a quick smile and a red car. The picture stayed blurry, but a shape was forming. One evening in Tampa, Florida, in 1995, a woman named Tina Marie Cribbs met Glen. He was friendly and calm, the kind of man who made a person feel seen. They talked, they laughed. Later, she did not come home. When police began to search, details started fitting together like pieces of a hard puzzle. Pain spread through a family and a city. The case would become the center of the storm that followed Glen wherever he went. He was later convicted in Florida for her murder. Around the same time, on the other side of the country, California had its own case, Sandra Gallagher, another woman who had met Glen and never made it back to her life. In a different courtroom and a different state, another jury listened, watched, and weighed the facts. Glen was convicted in California too. 2 states, 2 judgments. And still, whispers circled about other places, other nights, other names that never got answers. Courts deal in proof, not whispers, but the whispers never stopped. After those trials, the road narrowed. Warrants were issued, tips came in, patrol cars watched highways and motels, detectives compared notes across state lines. His face showed up on posters and on TV screens. Some people swore they had seen him at a gas station or a diner, talking, smiling, always moving. A few days later, the trail would grow cold again. He was good at slipping through cracks. But cracks close when enough weight presses down, and the weight was growing. After those trials, the road narrowed. Warrants were issued, tips came in, patrol cars watched highways and motels, detectives compared notes across state lines. His face showed up on posters and on TV screens. Some people swore they had seen him at a gas station or a diner, talking, smiling, always moving. A few days later, the trail would grow cold again. He was good at slipping through cracks. But cracks close when enough weight presses down, and the weight was growing. The manhunt built 1 mile at a time. Officers traded maps, fingerprints, and phone logs. They knocked on doors where Glen had slept and asked where he might go next. The more they learned, the more the picture sharpened. He liked quick exits and night drives. He liked cash and crowds. He liked being the new friendly face. He knew how to vanish in plain sight. But he was also tired. He was making mistakes, small ones at first, then bigger. The circle around him grew tighter. One day, blue lights flashed behind a car that matched a lookout notice. The engine roared, tires squealed, The chase was fast and loud, a ribbon of sirens and wind. Drivers pulled over as the car sliced past like an arrow. Up ahead, more units closed in, building a wall of blinking red and blue. The car swerved, lost control, and finally stopped. Officers moved in, shouting commands over the thud of their own hearts. Hands rose. Doors opened. The man with the easy smile was no longer a traveler. He was a prisoner. The country that had felt so open now felt very small. He would later be apprehended in 1995 after a multi-state hunt. Courtrooms followed, first in Florida, then in California. Jurors listened to days and days of careful words. Witnesses, timelines, phone records, paper trails, tiny marks that meant big things. The charm that once opened doors could not open these. Death sentences were given in both states. Appeals stretched for years. Lawyers argued about evidence, about past hurts, about the law and how it should be used. But time kept moving. In April 2025, Florida signed a death warrant. On May 15, 2025, the warrant was carried out by lethal injection. Outside the prison gates, reporters filed their stories. Inside, the hallway lights glowed a steady, pale yellow. And now the story turns on a hard edge. As the final words left Glen's lips and the clock marked 6:16 p.m., one person in the witness room quietly stood, ready to speak to the cameras, and to reveal a secret she said she had kept for 30 years. The woman stepped into the gray night air, past the chain-link fence and the cameras. She was in her late 40s now, hair pulled back, hands shaking as she held a small spiral notebook. "My name is Rachel Lewis," she said, voice soft but steady. "I knew Glen Rogers when I was 19. The reporters leaned forward. Rachel took a breath. "I've kept a secret for 30 years, she said. "And I can't keep it anymore." The microphones rose like a forest. She looked straight into the lights and whispered, "He told me there was a place only he and I knew. And he said there were things there no one would ever find." The crowd exploded with questions. Where was the place? What things? Rachel blinked against the flashes. "I was scared," she said. "Back then I thought if I told anyone, he'd come for me." A deputy stepped between her and the reporters, guiding her toward the sheriff's SUV. "We're going to talk at the station," the deputy said gently. Rachel nodded, still clutching the notebook. Behind them, the prison lights glowed like a small city. The night smelled like rain and hot wires. Somewhere a generator hummed. Inside the station, Rachel opened the notebook with careful fingers. The pages were yellow and soft with time. "He called it the burn pile," she said. "A clearing behind an old storage lot a few miles off the highway." She drew a little map in pen, 2 right turns, a dirt track, a line of tall pines like dark guards. "He took me there one night," she whispered. "He said he threw old things there, things that didn't matter anymore." The detectives looked at each other. They had heard words like this before, but hearing them now, after the execution, brought a new silence to the room. By dawn, 2 SUVs rolled out, tires crunching over broken shell and dirt. Rachel sat in the back seat, chewing her lip, eyes on the trees blurring by. The sun was a thin stripe behind clouds. They passed a shuttered gas station, a rusted fence, and a locked gate. The deputy cut the chain, logging the time and place. The pines stood close together, and the air smelled like old smoke and wet leaves. "There," Rachel said, pointing. "Past that pile of roofing sheets. That's where he parked." The clearing looked harmless, just a circle of blackened earth, a few crushed beer cans, and a tire half buried in sand. But the ground was strange, not flat, not even. A canine handler unclipped a calm, tan dog named Rex. The dog sniffed, then changed pace, nose tight to the ash. He pawed, whined, pawed again. The handler raised a hand. "Mark it." A crime scene tech placed a small yellow tent marker with the number 1. Another marker. Then another. The detectives didn't speak. They only took careful steps and wrote down each small detail. Back at the station, Rachel told them more, how Glen bought matches by the handful and kept a little metal can in his trunk for burning stuff, how he liked to drive the long way, even when there was no traffic, how he never used his real name at diners. He could be kind, she said, but it felt like he was borrowing the kindness, like it didn't belong to him. She looked at the table. He'd smile and say, "Don't worry, nobody looks where the trees are thick." Her hands shook again. A detective slid a cup of water toward her. The lab called just before lunch. "We've got personal items in the ash," the tech said. "Buttons, a bit of zipper, a charm from a bracelet, also some burned fabric." The room went still. No one wanted to say the word that was in all their heads. The lead detective, Captain Hayes, spoke slowly. "Bag it all. Photograph every inch. We'll cross-check the charm against unsolved lists." He hung up and rubbed his eyes. Justice had been carried out the night before. And still, the past was opening new doors. The press learned about the search within hours. Cameras gathered at the dirt road like birds on a wire. People brought handmade signs. "We remember." For the families. Some were quiet and praying. Others were angry. A mother in a blue sweater stood at the tape, arms crossed tight. "If there's anything out there that can tell us where my daughter went," she said, "I want to see it." Deputies moved slowly, kindly, explaining that the area was now part of an active scene. The mother nodded and stayed anyway, staring into the trees as if her eyes could pull answers from the shadows. Late afternoon turned the pines the color of old coins. Rachel walked the edge of the tape with Captain Hayes. "When he brought you here," he asked, "what did he say?" Rachel swallowed. "He said he was showing me the one place in the world he trusted," she answered. He smiled, like it was a gift. She looked down at her notebook. "He told me secrets made him feel safe, like a blanket. He said secrets keep you warm." Hayes glanced toward the markers in the ash. "Secrets don't stay warm forever," he said. "Not when people keep looking." Just as the team began packing for the night, Rex stopped and stiffened near a patch of ground no one had flagged. He gave a sharp, urgent bark, the sound handlers call a find. The techs hurried over. In the ash, something small and round glinted, a metal locket, blackened at the edges but still holding its shape. A tech lifted it with tweezers and eased it into a clear evidence sleeve. Inside the locket, under soot, there was a tiny photo of a smiling teenage girl and the faint outline of a date pressed into the metal. The mother in the blue sweater let out a cry that cut through the trees like a siren. She pressed a hand to her mouth, shaking. Captain Hayes looked from the locket to Rachel, then to the growing crowd at the tape. The wind rose. The pines hissed. And as the generators clicked back on and threw hard light across the clearing, a second sound rose from the ash. Rex barking again, louder, digging at a spot just 3 feet away. The handler grabbed his collar. "We've got another one," he shouted. "Mark it, now."